This is the summary of When You're Ready, This Is How You Heal. Summarized by Cellwave Audio and narrated by Archie. Introduction. Healing rarely begins with grand decisions. It starts in small rooms on ordinary mornings, in the space between one honest breath and the next. You look at your life and notice the hairline fractures you once ignored. The hurried yes when you meant no. The friendships that require shrinking. The goals that impress everyone except the person who must live with them. Nothing is falling apart, yet something is asking to be rebuilt. That asking is the beginning. This book meets you there, in the subtle unrest that arrives when survival has done its job and growth wants the wheel. It does not assume you are broken. It assumes you are ready. Ready to trade self-abandonment for self-regard. Ready to release the stories that kept you safe, then small. Ready to practice micro-healing in the moments that never make a highlight reel, the glass of water before coffee, the walk before the inbox, the pause before a reaction that used to cost you peace. Brianna Wiest writes to the part of you that already knows the truth. She invites you to move from coping to choosing, from spirals of overthinking to structures that anchor. You will see how confidence grows from aligned action, not from waiting to feel brave. You will learn why endings are forms of integrity, why boundaries are acts of love, and why the most reliable sign that something is right for you is the calm that settles after the decision. The work is not to manufacture a new self, it is to uncover the one that has been speaking softly under the noise. Across these pages, healing is practical. It is a list you can try today, a prompt you can answer tonight, a reframe you can carry into hard conversations. You will map the phases of transformation, recognize the biases that bend your choices, and practice letting go without abandoning hope. You will disentangle fear from intuition, urgency from importance, and comfort from alignment. You will stop asking if you are behind, and start asking what would make today feel meaningful. This is a book about starting over, even when you stay where you are. It is about finding the courage to take the next small step, then letting that step teach you the next. It is about trusting that progress often looks like repetition, and that the day you wanted to quit may be the day a new pattern finally takes root. It is about remembering you are not alone, that other people are learning the same lessons in their own kitchens and cars and quiet apartments, and that community is often built through truth told plainly. When you are ready, healing becomes less about fixing and more about relating. You relate to your thoughts as passing weather. You relate to your feelings as teachers. You relate to your future as a responsibility you can love. You outgrow what requires your dimness, you welcome what honors your depth, and you practice kindness that is not indulgence but stewardship. The life that once felt distant begins to feel available because you keep meeting yourself where you are. If you let it, this book will place steady hands on your shoulders and turn you gently toward what matters. Not perfection, not performance, presence, choice, and a quiet promise to act like someone worth caring for. Because you are. And when you are ready, that truth is how you heal. Disclaimer. This document is an independent summary and interpretive companion to When You're Ready, This Is How You Heal by Brianna Wiest. It is intended for educational and inspirational use, highlighting core themes, ideas, and practices in an expanded narrative style. It does not reproduce the original text, and is not affiliated with or endorsed by the author or publisher. All rights to the source material remain with Brianna Wiest and her respective publisher. Readers are encouraged to support the author by purchasing the complete book, to experience her work in full context and voice. Chapter 1. When You're Ready, This Is How You Heal. Healing begins not with an instruction but with an invitation. It is not the thunderclap moment of decision you expect, but the quiet recognition that something in you no longer wants to live as before. There comes a day when your exhaustion with pretending outweighs your fear of changing, when the thought of continuing to numb yourself becomes more painful than the discomfort of truth. That day, ordinary as it may seem, is sacred. It marks the end of survival and the beginning of return, the return to yourself. The first step in healing is acknowledging that readiness does not mean strength, it means honesty. You are ready the moment you stop negotiating with your pain, the instant you choose to see things as they are rather than as you wish they were. Healing asks for awareness, not perfection. It asks that you be present to your life, not perform wellness for others. The body remembers what the mind avoids, and the soul waits patiently beneath the noise. To heal, you must turn toward what aches instead of away from it. This readiness often feels like collapse before it feels like clarity. You may feel disoriented, as though the self you built no longer fits. You may grieve the identities that protected you, being the reliable one, the strong one, the peacemaker, the achiever. These roles once kept you safe, but safety is not the same as wholeness. True healing is the dismantling of every mask you learned to wear to earn love. It's standing bare before your own reflection and realizing you were always enough, even before you became better. To heal is to let your nervous system relearn calm, to stop chasing intensity and start trusting stability. It means letting life's small moments matter again. The cup of tea that steadies your hands, the text from a friend that lands softly on your heart, the quiet morning that asks for nothing from you. These are not trivialities. They are the proof that peace does not arrive with applause but with attention. You will be tempted to rush, to demand visible progress, to turn your healing into a project you can measure. But the real work is invisible. It's in how you breathe through discomfort, how you speak to yourself after mistakes, how you treat others when you have nothing to gain. Healing unfolds through repetition, through the 1,000 small choices that rebuild trust with your own soul. Eventually, you will understand that healing is not a destination, it is a relationship. You learn to listen to yourself, as you would to a friend. You learn that discipline can be gentle, that forgiveness can be fierce, and that you are not defined by what happened to you but by how you hold what happened. Healing is not about erasing your story, it's about reclaiming authorship. When you are ready, you will not need to announce it. You will simply begin. The light will return quietly, one decision, one morning, one breath at a time. And though you will still tremble, you will keep walking, because this time you are walking home. Chapter 2. When you are ready to change your life, read this. Every transformation begins with a sentence you whisper to yourself: something has to change. You may not know what that something is, only that your life no longer mirrors your truth. The same routines that once felt comfortable now feel confining. The same conversations, the same self-justifications, the same distractions, they all begin to sound like echoes in an empty room. Change, you realize, is not a luxury. It is an act of honesty. When you are ready to change your life, it will not look heroic. It will look inconvenient. The things you once tolerated will start to feel unbearable. The habits that used to numb you will lose their power. The people who feed your doubts will fall silent in your spirit. Change is not a lightning strike, it is erosion, a steady wearing away of the false until only the necessary remains. You will resist it at first, because the familiar always feels safer than the unknown, even when it hurts. But discomfort is the language of growth. You will begin by noticing your own patterns, the way you apologize for existing, the way you silence your desires to avoid rejection, the way you chase validation instead of fulfillment. These patterns will reveal themselves not to shame you but to free you. Awareness is your first revolution. You cannot heal what you continue to deny. Every realization, no matter how painful, is a door opening toward your freedom. Changing your life will demand that you rewrite your definitions of success, love, and worth. You will discover that success is not accumulation, but alignment. That love is not performance, but presence. That worth is not earned, but remembered. You will unlearn the myth that happiness lives somewhere in the future. You will start to see that joy is not a destination, but a direction, a practice of choosing gratitude over scarcity, curiosity over fear, integrity over ease. There will be loss in this process. You will lose people who preferred the old version of you, the one who bent to fit their comfort. You will lose identities built on external approval. You will lose illusions that once made you feel in control. Yet in that loss you will find peace, the peace that comes from no longer needing to negotiate your existence. Real change is not adding more, it is subtracting what no longer belongs. Soon you will notice that life responds differently to your energy. Opportunities align. Conversations deepen. Rest feels restorative instead of guilty. The same world that once felt heavy begins to feel lighter, because you are no longer carrying the weight of pretending. Your power was never gone, it was buried beneath the noise. And so, when you are ready to change your life, do not wait for permission or perfect timing. Begin with what you have, where you are, with the next honest choice. Start by telling the truth to yourself, to others, to life itself. It will hurt. It will stretch you. It will demand patience. But it will also return you to yourself. Because change is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering the person you were before the world taught you who to be. And when you finally remember, your life will follow. Chapter 3. This year, let go of the people who aren't ready to love you. Letting go is not an act of cruelty, it's an act of courage. There will come a time when you finally understand that some people are not meant to walk with you into the next chapter of your healing. Their love, though once enough, cannot sustain the new version of you that is learning peace over chaos, honesty over approval. You will want to keep them, to explain your growth, to prove that your gentleness deserves to stay. But the truth is, love that must constantly be proven is not love that heals, it is love that drains. This chapter teaches that releasing people who are not ready to meet your depth is not rejection, it is respect. You are respecting your evolution and theirs. You are no longer begging to be seen by eyes that refuse to look. Some people will love the idea of you, the easy parts, the fun parts, the convenient parts, but not the whole truth of you. They will not know what to do when your joy dims, when your boundaries rise, when your silence means you've chosen peace. They will confuse your calm for distance, your honesty for cruelty, your growth for arrogance. That is not your burden to correct. Healing demands that you stop betraying yourself for temporary belonging. You cannot keep shrinking to fit inside someone's comfort zone and still expect to bloom. When you cling to those who cannot reciprocate your honesty, you trade your energy for hope. You begin to confuse familiarity with connection, and you start to mistake endurance for love. But real love, the kind that heals, will not require you to beg for space to exist. It will honor your truth, without punishing you for speaking it. Letting go is an act of faith. It is trusting that absence can create room for abundance. It's believing that the relationships meant for you will not require self-abandonment to survive. It is the quiet knowing that peace is not loneliness, it's clarity. You will cry, you will doubt, and you will remember only the good moments at first. But over time, the weight of holding on will start to feel heavier than the grief of release. That is when you know it's time. In that space of release, you will rediscover yourself. You will find that solitude can be nourishing, that your own company can be safe, that your worth does not depend on anyone's ability to recognize it. You will stop rehearsing how to earn love and start learning how to receive it. You will stop chasing closure and start creating it. When you let go of those who aren't ready to love you, you don't lose love, you make room for it. You open your life to relationships built on reciprocity instead of rescue, honesty instead of performance. You learn that love cannot grow where truth is silenced. And as you walk away trembling but sure, you will feel the freedom that comes from no longer asking others to water the roots of your peace. Because sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is to stop trying to convince someone that you are worth loving. You already are. The right people will know that without being told. Chapter 4: 47 Ways to Practice Micro-Healing in Your Everyday Life. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds in small, almost invisible choices that accumulate over time. This chapter is a guide to those choices, the daily practices that begin to shift the rhythm of your life from survival to serenity. Brianna Wiest calls them micro-healings, tiny acts of awareness and self-respect that, repeated consistently, become the architecture of transformation. It begins in the morning. Before reaching for your phone, you take one full breath and ask your body what it needs. You drink a glass of water not because it's part of a routine, but because you're learning to care for yourself without urgency. You step outside for a moment of sunlight, even when you feel heavy, because you understand that light heals in ways logic never can. These are the quiet beginnings of restoration. Micro-healing also means allowing yourself to feel without judgment. You stop labeling emotions as good or bad, and start listening to what they are trying to teach you. Sadness becomes a messenger. Anger becomes a signal. Fear becomes a map. You no longer suppress or spiritualize your pain, you witness it, you name it, and by doing so you soften its grip. Some forms of healing will look deceptively simple. Saying no, without over-explaining. Going to bed when you're tired instead of pushing through. Leaving a conversation that drains your peace. Cleaning your space because chaos outside often mirrors chaos within. Choosing to speak gently to yourself after a mistake, instead of repeating old scripts of self-blame. These are not small things. They are the foundations of self-trust. Micro-healing is also about returning to the body. You stretch, you move, you rest, not as punishment or reward but as communication. You start paying attention to your posture, to how anxiety tightens your chest, to how joy expands it. You begin to rebuild the relationship with your physical self, realizing that healing cannot happen in the mind alone. The body keeps score, but it also keeps memory, tenderness, and resilience. Then there's the healing found in stillness, the decision to pause before reacting, to breathe before speaking, to wait before assuming. You learn that maturity is not suppression, it's space. You stop needing to win arguments and start choosing peace instead. You understand that walking away from drama doesn't make you weak, it means your energy has become too valuable to waste. And through it all, you start to notice the subtle signs of change. The triggers that once sent you spiraling now feel like small ripples. The things that once drained you no longer hold your attention. You laugh more easily, you rest more deeply, you forgive yourself faster. Healing reveals itself not in grand moments, but in ordinary days that no longer hurt the way they used to. The 47 ways Brianna lists are less a checklist and more a philosophy. Healing is not a destination, it's a practice. Each gentle decision is a vote for the life you want to live. Each act of awareness is a promise that you are still becoming. You do not have to do all 47. You only have to do one, then another and another, until one day you look around and realize that you have quietly, faithfully healed. Chapter 5: The truth of who you are is more than you let yourself believe. At some point in your healing, you will realize that the limits you've lived within were never the edges of your potential, they were the walls of your fear. You have spent years defining yourself by memories, mistakes, and the reflections others held up to you. You learned to measure worth through what you achieved, who approved of you, or how much you were needed. But there is a deeper truth waiting beneath the noise. You are far more than the version of yourself you have been taught to believe in. The truth of who you are is not hidden in your past or earned through success. It has always been present, quietly waiting for you to stop performing and start remembering. Beneath every layer of self-doubt lies a calm knowing that you were made for more peace, more meaning, more honesty. The problem is not that you are lost, it's that you've mistaken survival for identity. You became so good at adapting that you began to confuse your masks for your face. Healing begins when you take those masks off and stand unarmored in your own light. This chapter invites you to challenge the old stories that keep you small. You are not too sensitive, you are perceptive. You are not too much, you are expressive. You are not behind, you are unfolding at the pace wisdom requires. The world may have convinced you that you must choose between belonging and authenticity, but the truth is, any space that demands you shrink is too small for the person you are becoming. The real work of healing is not becoming perfect, It's reclaiming the fullness you once silenced to stay safe. To live in alignment with your truth is to stop outsourcing your validation. It is to recognize that confidence isn't built by convincing others of your worth. It's built by no longer needing to. You begin to ask new questions. What feels true in my body, not just acceptable in my mind? What kind of life would feel peaceful, even if no one else approved? These questions are how you remember yourself. They become your compass when the world tries to pull you back into performance. As you awaken to this truth, the world will look different. Relationships that once felt essential may now feel misaligned. Goals that once motivated you may now feel empty. That's not failure, it's clarity. You're not breaking down, you're breaking free. Healing asks that you release identities that were never yours, and build a life that mirrors your essence instead of your conditioning. You will begin to feel a quiet confidence in your bones, not because everything makes sense, but because you finally trust yourself to handle what doesn't. You will realize that authenticity is not a destination. It is a daily decision to stay true to what is real, even when it's uncomfortable. You will start to live from your center instead of your wounds. And one day, without realizing it, you will stop asking if you are enough. You will feel the truth of it humming beneath your skin. You will look at your reflection not through the eyes of judgment or comparison, but through the eyes of compassion, and you will finally recognize the person staring back. Not who you were told to be. Not who you tried to be. But who you are and have always been all along. Chapter 6. This is how to start over, even if you're staying right where you are. Starting over does not always mean changing your job, your address, or your relationships. Sometimes it means changing the way you move through the life you already have. It's realizing that you don't need a new city to create peace. You need a new perspective. You don't need to erase your story, you need to rewrite your relationship with it. This chapter teaches that rebirth is not relocation, it's revelation. You can begin again, without ever leaving the room you're in. To start over is to stop waiting for perfect circumstances. It is to look at your current reality, not as punishment but as possibility. Every ordinary day can become sacred if you learn to meet it differently. The same kitchen where you once rushed can become a space for gratitude. The same job that once felt dull can become a platform for discipline and purpose. The same body you once criticized can become the home where your peace begins. You do not need to trade your life, you need to return to it with new eyes. The process begins with acceptance, not escape. You cannot heal what you continue to resent. You must allow yourself to be where you are before you can move forward. Acceptance is not surrender to stagnation, it's alignment with truth. When you stop fighting your present, you free up energy to create something better. From that stillness, clarity emerges. You begin to ask not, how do I fix this, but, what is this trying to teach me? Then comes choice. Every morning becomes an opportunity to practice beginning again. You make your bed not as routine but as declaration. You take a walk not because it's productive, but because it reminds you that movement itself is proof of life. You forgive yourself for yesterday's versions of you, the one who reacted in fear, who stayed too long, who didn't yet know better. Each act of grace toward yourself plants the seed of renewal. Starting over also requires humility. You will not rebuild your life overnight. Some days you will take steps forward, other days you will fall into old patterns. But healing is not about perfection, it's about persistence. You learn to begin again 1,000 times if needed. You learn to measure progress by how quickly you return to peace, not by how rarely you stumble. And in time, you discover that starting over is less about changing what's around you, and more about awakening what's within you. The external world might look the same walls, the same sky, the same faces, but you will feel different. The air will seem lighter because you're no longer carrying the weight of resistance. You will realize that you are not rebuilding from scratch, you are rebuilding from experience, from wisdom, from faith. To start over right where you are is to trust that your current chapter is not a punishment, it's preparation. The life you want is not waiting for you somewhere else. It's waiting for you to show up differently here. And the moment you decide to treat your present as sacred ground, you will see that every ending has been an invitation all along, to start again not as who you were but as who you are becoming. Chapter 7. The greatest healing often happens in the most ordinary ways. The moments that truly mend you rarely arrive with ceremony. They slip in quietly, unnoticed, the way morning light spills across your bed, the way laughter breaks through after weeks of silence, the way you exhale without realizing you'd been holding your breath. Healing is not always dramatic. It is often disguised as daily life. This chapter teaches that the greatest transformations unfold not in the monumental shifts, but in the gentle rhythms of ordinary days that remind you you're still here, still capable of joy, still moving forward. We spend much of our lives waiting for something grand to mark the end of pain. A new job, a perfect relationship, a spiritual awakening, but healing rarely announces itself that way. It comes instead through subtle recalibrations. Waking up rested instead of restless, craving peace more than validation, choosing kindness over control. It arrives in the moments when you realize that what once triggered you now passes through you like a wave that no longer knocks you down. The ordinary becomes sacred when you begin to see it as evidence of life returning. Washing dishes can be meditation. Driving home can be a moment of gratitude. A quiet evening alone can become proof that solitude and loneliness are not the same. Healing teaches you that joy does not only live in new beginnings, it also lives in the steady heartbeat of what already is. There is power in slowing down long enough to notice. The more you pay attention to the small miracles around you, the softness of air after rain, the familiar smell of coffee, the sound of someone's laughter, the more you begin to recognize that healing is not something you chase but something you allow. Life was never asking you to perform your recovery, it was asking you to participate in it. It's also in the ordinary that forgiveness takes root. You forgive yourself in the moments no one sees, in how you speak to yourself when you drop something, when you forget, when you fail. Forgiveness grows in these quiet moments of grace, not in grand gestures of absolution. Over time, these small mercies rebuild your trust in life, one simple act at a time. The greatest healing, then, is not the kind that changes everything overnight, it's the kind that changes how you experience everything that already exists. You stop needing life to be extraordinary in order to feel alive. You start realizing that peace was never hiding in distant futures, it was always woven into the moments you rushed through. So when you feel stuck, lost, or unhealed, look for the ordinary. Let it remind you that miracles do not always look like explosions of light. They often look like a steady flame that refuses to go out. Healing happens when you start tending to that flame, feeding it with presence, gratitude, and the courage to keep noticing what is still beautiful. Chapter 8. The 8 Phases of Deep Personal Transformation. Every profound change follows a pattern, even when it feels chaotic. Transformation, like nature, moves through phases, each one necessary, each one carrying its own lessons. In this chapter, Brianna West maps out these 8 phases, not as rigid steps, but as living movements that flow into one another. She teaches that transformation is cyclical, not linear, and that growth often requires revisiting earlier stages with greater awareness. The first phase is awakening. It begins when you realize something in your life no longer fits. This moment can arrive as exhaustion, dissatisfaction, or sudden clarity. You may not know what's wrong, you just know you can't stay the same. This is the call to change, and it always begins with discomfort. Next comes unraveling. This is where you begin to question everything you once accepted as true. Old beliefs, relationships, and routines start to loosen their hold. You might feel lost or fragmented, but this is necessary. Unraveling is not destruction, it's preparation. The threads must separate before they can be rewoven. The third phase is resistance. Once you realize change is inevitable, fear tries to pull you back to safety. You'll second-guess yourself, crave familiarity, and long for the old life you're outgrowing. This is where many people stop, mistaking fear for a sign to quit. But resistance is proof that transformation is working. It means your comfort zone is stretching. Then comes release. You begin letting go of control, of expectations, of people who cannot walk with you any farther. This is painful but liberating. Every ending makes room for something new. In this phase, surrender becomes your teacher. You learn that letting go is not giving up, it's giving in to flow. The fifth phase is rebuilding. After the dust settles, you start creating new structures around your evolving self. New habits, new boundaries, new intentions take shape. It's slow, often fragile, but it's real. This is where you start to trust again, your choices, your instincts, your ability to begin anew. Then comes integration. Here, the lessons of your transformation start to live in your daily behavior. What you once practiced consciously becomes natural. You no longer just talk about healing, you live it. The gap between what you know and how you act begins to close, and you start to feel aligned again. The seventh phase is expansion. This is where you begin to dream again, not from a place of escape but from a place of faith. You rediscover joy, creativity, and purpose. Life no longer feels like survival, it feels like participation. You realize that healing has made you more open, not more guarded. Finally comes transcendence. This is not an endpoint but a return to self, deeper and clearer than before. You begin to understand that transformation was never about becoming someone new, it was about remembering the person you were before fear took over. You live lighter, grounded in trust rather than control, peace rather than proof. The beauty of these 8 phases is that they spiral through your life repeatedly. Each new challenge, each new season, calls you to move through them again with greater wisdom. And with each cycle, you learn that transformation is not about fixing what's broken, it's about unfolding what's true. When you understand the rhythm of these phases, you stop demanding progress look perfect. You allow yourself to move at the pace of healing, to rest when you must, to rise when you're ready. Because deep personal transformation is not an event, it's a lifelong conversation between your pain and your potential, between who you were and who you're becoming. Chapter 9 to 7 Psychological Biases that are making you resist your own growth. Growth isn't just about gaining wisdom, it's also about learning to see through the illusions that keep you stuck. The human mind is wired to protect you from pain, not to evolve you toward truth. And so, when change threatens the familiar, the mind deploys subtle defenses, psychological biases that make you believe you're safer standing still. In this chapter, Brianna West unpacks 7 of these biases, showing how they quietly sabotage transformation and how awareness can free you from them. The first is confirmation bias, the tendency to seek only information that supports what you already believe. It's the voice that says, "This is just how I am," when in truth you're afraid of who you could become. Growth demands that you challenge your own narratives, that you read what unsettles you, that you let new perspectives stretch your understanding of yourself. The second is the status quo bias, the instinct to cling to the familiar even when it hurts. This bias keeps you replaying old stories, staying in half-alive situations because comfort masquerades as safety. Healing requires courage to disturb your own peace in order to build a truer one. Change will never feel comfortable, but comfort has never been the same as peace. The third bias is negativity bias, your brain's habit of magnifying what's wrong and minimizing what's right. It evolved to protect you from danger, but in healing it keeps you blind to progress. You might have 5 moments of peace and 1 of panic, and your mind will call the day a failure. Awareness interrupts that cycle. The more you train yourself to notice grace, the more it multiplies. Next comes projection bias, the assumption that other people see and feel the world the way you do. This leads to unnecessary pain. You interpret silence as rejection, criticism as cruelty, indifference as hate. Healing teaches you that people's actions are reflections of their own realities, not confirmations of your inadequacy. You can't read their minds, but you can manage your meanings. Then there is the sunk cost fallacy, the tendency to keep investing in what no longer serves you simply because you already have. You stay in jobs, relationships, or mindsets because you've given them years, and walking away feels like waste. But the truth is, staying stuck wastes more time than leaving ever could. Letting go is not losing, it's reallocating energy toward what can grow. The sixth bias is availability bias, believing that what's most vivid in memory is what's most real. You remember failures more sharply than victories, heartbreaks more vividly than joys. Healing asks you to rebalance the scale, to hold space for beauty with the same seriousness you hold pain. You are not defined by what went wrong, you are shaped by how you responded. Finally, there's the illusion of control, the belief that if you plan enough, work enough, or anticipate enough, you can prevent hurt. But growth requires surrender. You will not control life into safety, you will trust it into meaning. Control is exhausting, faith is freeing. The more you let go, the more life begins to unfold in your favor, not because it bends to your will but because you've stopped resisting its rhythm. When you begin to recognize these biases, you no longer mistake them for truth. You learn to pause before reacting, to question your own assumptions, to breathe before believing every thought that crosses your mind. Self-awareness becomes the bridge between fear and freedom. You stop being ruled by old mental shortcuts and start choosing from clarity instead of conditioning. Growth then becomes less about striving and more about seeing. You stop asking, "What do I need to fix?" and begin asking, "What story am I still believing?" Because once you see the illusion, you're no longer trapped inside it. Chapter 10. Everything that's truly right for you will make you feel at peace. You will spend much of your life mistaking intensity for alignment. You'll chase people, jobs, and dreams that make your heart race and your mind spin, confusing anxiety for excitement and attachment for love. But the deeper you heal, the more you'll learn that what's truly meant for you doesn't ignite chaos, it brings calm. Peace, not passion, is the truest confirmation of alignment. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest explains that peace isn't the absence of challenge, it's the absence of inner conflict. When something is right for you, your body relaxes into it. You don't need to argue with yourself or justify your choice to others. Peace feels like a deep exhale, like standing barefoot on solid ground after years of running. It's not dull, it's steady. It's not boring, it's balanced. The world often glamorizes friction. We're told that if it doesn't scare us, it isn't growth, that love must feel like a storm to be real, that ambition must come with exhaustion to be valid. But healing shows you that harmony is a higher frequency than hustle. What's right for you doesn't demand you abandon yourself to sustain it. It aligns with your values, supports your well-being, and feels like truth even in uncertainty. To find that peace, you must learn to listen to your body. The body always knows before the mind does. Notice how your chest tightens when you force yourself into things misaligned with your soul. Notice how your shoulders drop when you're in a space that feels safe. This awareness becomes your compass. Your nervous system, not your ego, will guide you toward what's real. There will be times when what's right for you won't feel easy. Peace does not mean the absence of effort, it means the presence of clarity. Even when challenges arise, you'll feel a sense of rightness underneath it, a grounded certainty that says, this difficulty has purpose. By contrast, when something isn't right, the struggle feels empty. No matter how much you push, it doesn't flow, it fights back. This chapter reminds you that peace is not found by eliminating difficulty, but by aligning your energy with truth. You'll start to recognize that peace can coexist with passion, that calm can coexist with effort. It's not about giving up intensity, it's about ensuring your intensity serves joy, not anxiety. You'll learn that the more you align with what's real, the quieter the noise becomes. Eventually, you'll stop chasing what looks good and start choosing what feels right. You'll trust that peace is not a consolation prize but the sign that your soul has found resonance. You'll understand that the people, paths and purposes meant for you will never make you betray your inner calm to keep them. They will meet you where you are, not demand you shrink to stay. And in that knowing, you'll begin to make peace your standard. You'll measure success not by applause but by serenity. You'll make choices that let you sleep deeply and wake without dread. Because when you finally learn that everything right for you feels like peace, you'll stop chasing storms and start choosing still waters, and that is where your healing truly takes root. Chapter 11. You have to practice letting go. Letting go is not something you do once, it's something you practice every day. It's a muscle that strengthens each time you release what no longer serves you, a thought, a fear, a resentment, a version of yourself that has outlived its season. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest explains that real freedom is not found in control but in surrender, not in holding tighter but in learning how to release with trust. Letting go begins when you stop trying to make life fit your timeline. It happens the moment you realize that clinging to what's slipping away doesn't preserve it, it poisons you. We hold on because we fear loss, but the truth is, holding on is a form of loss itself. It costs you presence, peace, and possibility. You cannot grasp the future while your hands are still wrapped around the past. Most of us imagine letting go as an act of abandonment, but it's actually an act of faith. You're not giving up, you're making space. You're trusting that what's meant for you will return in a better form, and what's not meant for you will make room for something greater. You're allowing the universe or God to do what only it can do, transform endings into beginnings. Wiest reminds us that letting go doesn't always mean walking away. Sometimes it means staying but detaching from the need to control outcomes, staying but releasing resentment, staying but accepting things as they are. You can let go of expectation while still showing up with love. You can let go of the story of how it should have been and start living the truth of what is. The practice of letting go is gentle but powerful. It's found in the pause before you reply in anger, in the deep breath you take instead of overreacting, in the silent decision to stop revisiting what hurt you. Each release becomes a small act of renewal. You begin to realize that peace doesn't come from getting everything you want, it comes from no longer needing to grip so tightly. Over time, letting go becomes less of a heartbreak and more of a habit. You'll start to trust the flow of life. You'll stop fearing endings because you'll know they are always preludes to new beginnings. You'll understand that closure doesn't come from others, it comes from within, from deciding that peace is worth more than control. And one day you'll look back on all the things you thought you couldn't live without and realize you survived, even thrived. You'll see that the space you created by letting go became the foundation where joy could return. Because every release, no matter how painful, is a declaration: I trust that what's meant for me will find me, and I will not chase what isn't mine. Chapter 12. This is how you find the confidence to pursue what you really love. Confidence isn't built through applause, it's built through alignment. It doesn't come from waiting to be fearless, it comes from acting with faith despite the fear. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest shows that confidence grows not by perfecting yourself, but by honoring what you love and daring to follow it, even when it doesn't make sense to others. The first step toward confidence is honesty. You must admit what you truly desire, even if it feels impossible. Many people never experience real fulfillment because they never give themselves permission to want what they want. They edit their dreams to fit logic, approval, or safety. But your calling will never shrink to fit convenience. It will keep whispering, keep stirring until you answer it. Wiest teaches that pursuing what you love is not about reckless optimism, it's about devotion. Confidence grows each time you keep a promise to yourself, each time you choose consistency over doubt. When you show up for your passion, even in small ways, you prove to your subconscious that you can trust yourself. That trust, not perfection, is what builds inner strength. To pursue what you love, you must also release comparison. The world will tempt you to measure your progress against someone else's timeline. But comparison is theft. It robs you of joy in the very place where your power is growing. Your path is yours because it's tailored to your soul's curriculum. You will take detours, face delays, and experience uncertainty, but these are not failures, they are forms of refinement. Confidence doesn't mean you never doubt, it means you don't let doubt decide. You will feel fear when you step into something new, but fear can walk beside you without steering the wheel. Every great transformation is preceded by a trembling moment, and you must learn to interpret that trembling as readiness, not resistance. Eventually, you'll see that confidence is not loud. It doesn't need to prove itself or announce its arrival. It's quiet, grounded, steady. It's knowing who you are and no longer apologizing for it. It's walking into rooms that once intimidated you and realizing you belong there, not because someone said so, but because you do. To find confidence, you must act in alignment with love, not fear. You must remember that purpose is not always glamorous. Sometimes it's found in quiet devotion to what moves you. And as you keep showing up for your truth, the world will adjust around you. Not because you demanded it, but because energy that's anchored in authenticity always makes room for itself. Chapter 13. Read this if you're on the brink of a breakthrough but are afraid to take the leap. Every breakthrough begins as fear. It's the trembling before the decision, the quiet war between the part of you that knows it's time and the part that's terrified to move. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest writes to those standing at that edge, the threshold between who you were and who you're becoming. She reminds you that fear is not a stop sign, it's a signpost that you're close to something sacred. The brink of a breakthrough is a sacred place. It feels like chaos because your old life is collapsing under the weight of what's next. The mind clings to what's known, even if it's painful, because the unknown feels like death. But growth requires you to die to the version of yourself that cannot survive the next level of your life. This is why breakthroughs feel like breakdowns. They're the same process viewed from different sides. You may feel confused, restless, emotional, or detached. That's because your nervous system is recalibrating. The things that once defined you no longer make sense, but the new ones haven't fully formed yet. You're in between worlds and it's uncomfortable. But discomfort is the signal of evolution. When you feel it, it means life is moving through you, preparing you for expansion. Fear often disguises itself as logic. It tells you you're not ready, that you need more time, that the timing isn't right. But fear's job is not to protect you from failure, it's to keep you safe from change. The breakthrough begins when you stop negotiating with fear and start walking anyway. You don't need the full plan, you only need the next faithful step. Wiest teaches that courage is not the absence of fear, it's acting while afraid. It's realizing that fear and growth are twins, they appear together every time your soul expands. If you wait to feel ready, you'll wait forever. Readiness is something that appears in motion, not before it. You step, and the ground rises to meet you. Your breakthrough will not always arrive with lightning. Sometimes it's quiet, one choice, one conversation, one boundary that changes everything. And once you cross that invisible line, you'll realize the fear was never proof you couldn't do it, it was proof that you were about to. When you're on the brink of change, remember this: fear is excitement without breath. Take the breath. Take the leap. The bridge appears when you walk. You were never meant to stay at the edge, you were meant to cross it. Chapter 14:16 Ways emotionally intelligent people interpret negative feelings differently. Emotional intelligence is not about suppressing emotions, it's about translating them. It's the ability to see every feeling, even the uncomfortable ones, as information rather than identity. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest explains that people who are emotionally mature don't fear negative emotions, they learn from them. The difference lies not in what they feel, but in how they interpret what they feel. Emotionally intelligent people understand that sadness isn't weakness, it's awareness. They don't run from it, they sit with it long enough to learn what it's revealing. They know that grief shows them what they valued, and that longing points toward what's still possible. They recognize that discomfort is not the enemy of peace, it's the beginning of clarity. They also view anger as a messenger, not a monster. Instead of letting it explode or burying it under guilt, they trace its source. Anger often signals a crossed boundary, an ignored need, or a deep wound asking for acknowledgement. Emotional maturity transforms anger into assertion, pain into purpose, reaction into reflection. Emotionally intelligent people also know that fear is data, not destiny. They listen to what fear is trying to protect, then decide whether that protection is still necessary. Fear shows up when growth is near. They've learned to thank it and keep moving forward anyway. They interpret jealousy as inspiration, a mirror showing them what they secretly desire. Instead of resenting others, they use that emotion to identify their own unspoken dreams. They interpret anxiety as an overactive imagination, the mind's way of trying to control what it can't predict. Rather than fighting it, they ground themselves in the present moment and remind their bodies they are safe. Emotionally intelligent people no longer label emotions as good or bad, they see them as guides. They know that joy expands when it's noticed, pain softens when it's named, and peace deepens when it's practiced. They understand that emotions are visitors, not permanent residents. They come to deliver messages, and when you listen, they move on. Ultimately, this chapter teaches that emotional intelligence isn't about being unaffected, it's about being unshaken. You stop fearing your feelings and start working with them. You stop asking, "How do I get rid of this?" and start asking, "What is this trying to show me?" Every emotion becomes a teacher, and when you learn its language, your healing accelerates. Chapter 15. When you're ready to take your power back, begin here. Taking back your power doesn't mean becoming hard, it means becoming whole. It's not about dominating others or forcing life to obey. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself you've given away to fear, to people-pleasing, to guilt, to expectations that never fit. In this chapter, Brianna West guides you through the process of remembering that your life belongs to you, and peace begins the moment you stop giving permission to anything that drains your spirit. You start by identifying where your energy leaks. You notice the patterns, the conversations that leave you depleted, the relationships that thrive only when you self-abandon, the thoughts that spiral you into anxiety. Awareness is the first act of reclamation. You cannot change what you won't confront, and you cannot protect what you don't notice is being stolen. Next, you redefine responsibility. You are not responsible for other people's reactions, healing, or happiness. You can love them deeply, but their journey is theirs just as yours is yours. You begin to see that empathy without boundaries is self-destruction, and that compassion doesn't require martyrdom. Real love never asks you to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. As you reclaim your power, you also learn to speak truth even when your voice shakes. You stop diluting your opinions to maintain peace that isn't real. You begin to trust that the right people will stay, not because you make yourself small but because you make yourself honest. This is how your circle becomes sacred: fewer people, deeper connection, higher peace. West reminds you that power is not aggression, it's clarity. It's the ability to respond rather than react, to make decisions rooted in your values instead of your wounds. Each time you choose authenticity over approval, you call your power back. Each time you say no when your body says no, you strengthen it. Each time you forgive without reopening access, you protect it. The more you practice, the more you realize that your power was never truly lost, it was only misplaced. It was buried under guilt, under shame, under the noise of trying to please everyone but yourself. And when you finally begin to live from it again, life starts to rearrange itself. Opportunities align. Peace becomes your new baseline. To take your power back is to choose sovereignty over suffering. It's to live like your energy is sacred and your time is finite. It's the moment you stop asking for permission to exist and start living like you already have it. Because you do. Chapter 16. 13 Things you need to stop doing if you truly want to move your life forward. Growth requires release as much as effort. You can't move forward while dragging what's holding you back. This chapter lays out 13 habits, patterns, and mindsets that silently sabotage your progress, and how to let them go with grace. The first is stop waiting to feel ready. Readiness is born in motion, not before it. You will never feel completely prepared to change your life. Begin anyway, confidence will catch up. Stop confusing being busy with being productive. Healing happens in stillness too. You can be in constant motion and go nowhere. True progress comes from intention, not activity. Stop romanticizing the past. Nostalgia filters memory through emotion, making pain look like comfort. The past is a reference, not a destination. Honor it, but don't live there. Stop mistaking comfort for peace. Comfort keeps you safe but small. Peace challenges you to grow without chaos. You'll know the difference by how your body feels. Comfort numbs, peace expands. Stop over-apologizing. You are not a disruption, you are a presence. Save apologies for when you've harmed, not for when you've simply existed. Stop waiting for permission. No one is coming to declare you worthy. The moment you decide your dreams are valid, is the moment life begins to rearrange itself around them. Stop trying to fix people. You can't heal someone into readiness. Love them, pray for them, but stop playing savior in stories that aren't yours to rewrite. Stop making fear your advisor. Fear will always suggest the smallest option. Listen to it for information, not instruction. Stop saying yes when your heart says no. Boundaries are not walls, they are bridges that keep connection honest. Stop equating self-worth with productivity. You are valuable in rest, in stillness, in simply being. You don't have to earn your existence. Stop clinging to outcomes. The path is often wiser than the plan. When you let go of control, you make room for better directions than you could imagine. Stop assuming pain means punishment. Often, it means preparation. Growth requires discomfort because your soul can't expand in stagnation. And finally, stop believing you're running out of time. The clock is not your enemy, comparison is. Your timeline is divine. Everything is unfolding on schedule. Each of these releases is a form of progress. You stop doing what drains you, and suddenly there's space for what fulfills you. You stop fighting life, and life begins to meet you halfway. Moving forward isn't about doing more, it's about doing less of what keeps you small. And when you finally let go of these old patterns, you realize you were never stuck, you were simply holding too tightly to what was meant to be released. Chapter 17. Within the emotions you are afraid to feel exists the wisdom your soul is waiting to receive. The emotions you fear most, grief, shame, loneliness, anger, are not barriers to healing, they are gateways to it. In this chapter, Brianna West reveals a truth that many spend years avoiding: the feelings you suppress are the lessons you most need to learn. Avoiding emotion doesn't protect you, it delays your transformation. Each unprocessed feeling waits quietly inside you, asking not to be fixed but to be felt. When you finally stop running from your pain, it changes form. Grief becomes gratitude for what was meaningful. Anger becomes clarity about what you value. Fear becomes awareness of where you need trust. Every emotion, when faced with honesty, becomes a teacher. But when repressed, those same emotions become shadows that distort your perception of life. Healing requires that you bring them into the light. West reminds you that pain does not come to destroy you, it comes to deliver wisdom. You must be willing to sit in the discomfort long enough to hear what it's trying to say. Crying, trembling, silence, these are not regressions. They are releases. Every tear carries unspoken truth out of your body. Every sigh is a chapter closing. To feel fully is to cleanse deeply. Many people try to skip this part of healing. They chase distractions, new relationships, achievements, addictions of busyness, anything to avoid feeling. But avoidance only traps you in repetition. The lessons you refuse to face will reappear until you do. True freedom comes not from escape but from embodiment. You cannot heal what you will not face, you cannot face what you will not feel. Once you give yourself permission to feel, something miraculous happens, your capacity expands. You become stronger, softer, wiser. You no longer fear emotional storms, because you trust your ability to stand in the rain and not drown. You start to understand that your emotions were never enemies, they were messages from your deepest self asking to be acknowledged. Within every feeling you've been avoiding lies a fragment of your truth. When you listen, you reclaim it. The sadness that weighed you down becomes compassion. The anger that scared you becomes courage. The shame that silenced you becomes humility. The wisdom your soul was waiting to give you was never beyond reach. It was within the very emotions you feared to feel. Healing, then, is not the absence of pain, it's the intimacy you develop with it. Once you learn to sit with your emotions rather than escape them, they stop controlling you. You finally become the witness of your pain, not its prisoner. Chapter 18:10 Signs you're actually making progress in life, even if it doesn't feel like you are. Progress rarely feels like progress. It's subtle, quiet, and often disguised as fatigue or confusion. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest explains that growth is not always visible from the inside. You may feel lost, but that's only because you're walking a new path with new eyes. Real transformation often looks like stillness before it feels like movement. You're making progress when your triggers begin to soften. You may still feel the pull of old emotions, but you no longer act on them. You pause, breathe, and choose differently. That pause is power. You're making progress when you stop needing closure from others. You begin to understand that peace doesn't require explanation, it requires acceptance. You're making progress when you care more about alignment than approval. The opinions that once shook you now feel distant, irrelevant even. You're learning to anchor your worth inside yourself instead of in others. You're making progress when you rest without guilt. When you finally allow yourself to stop, not because you've done enough, but because you deserve stillness. Rest becomes restoration, not laziness. You're making progress when you stop chasing intensity and start seeking consistency. Chaos once felt like home because it mirrored your unhealed parts. Now calm feels like safety. You begin to prefer stability over adrenaline. You're making progress when your self-talk changes tone. You replace self-criticism with compassion. You no longer speak to yourself like an enemy, you speak like someone worth protecting. You're making progress when you find beauty in simplicity. The small moments, a quiet meal, a kind text, a walk outside, start to feel enough. Joy no longer demands extravagance. You're making progress when you let people leave without resentment. You stop taking departures personally. You understand that some endings are divine redirections. You're making progress when you no longer rush your timeline. You trust that life's unfolding has purpose. Patience becomes a form of faith, not passivity. And finally, you're making progress when you feel peace even while uncertain. You may not have all the answers, but you feel grounded in the knowing that you can handle whatever comes. Progress, Wiest reminds, is rarely glamorous. It's made of invisible shifts, thoughts you don't think anymore, reactions you no longer give, tears that come with understanding instead of despair. It's quieter than you expect, but infinitely more powerful. The absence of chaos is not stagnation, it's healing doing its quiet work. You are changing, even when it doesn't feel like it. And someday soon you'll realize that everything that once felt heavy has become light, not because the world changed but because you did. Chapter 19. How to remember you're not alone, even when it really feels like you are. Loneliness has a way of convincing you that you are invisible, forgotten, and separate from everyone else. But in truth, loneliness is not absence, it's awareness. It's the soul's reminder that connection is a need, not a weakness. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest helps you see loneliness not as a void to escape but as a bridge back to yourself and the world around you. You are never truly alone because your experiences, however specific, are universally human. The heartbreak that isolates you has been felt by countless others. The uncertainty that keeps you awake at night has whispered through millions of hearts. When you remember that, loneliness becomes less of a punishment and more of a passage, a threshold between disconnection and belonging. Wiest explains that loneliness often deepens during healing because you're detaching from what was false before finding what's real. The people, habits, and identities that once kept you company no longer fit, and in that in-between you feel empty. But emptiness is not failure, it's space. Space where new relationships, passions, and versions of you can grow. To move through loneliness, you must start where you are. Reach out, even awkwardly. Send the text. Join the class. Make the small talk. People are often waiting for you to go first, to extend a hand that says, "Me too." You don't need to meet hundreds. You only need a few souls who remind you that connection still exists. But even before others arrive, remember, solitude has its gifts. It reconnects you to your intuition, sharpens your awareness, and helps you hear your own voice without the noise of approval. When you stop fighting aloneness, it transforms into aliveness. You begin to notice your surroundings again, the breeze, the quiet hum of life, the subtle beauty that exists even in silence. You can also remember you're not alone, by grounding yourself in contribution. When you help someone, you dissolve the illusion of separation. Acts of kindness, small, simple gestures, tie you back into the web of humanity. You realize that belonging isn't something you find, it's something you practice. In the end, loneliness is not a verdict, it's an invitation. An invitation to connect, to open, to rebuild community from truth instead of dependency. The ache you feel is not proof that you're unloved, it's proof that you were made for love. And when you finally understand that, you'll see that you were never alone, not in heartbreak, not in growth, not in waiting. Every soul walking this earth is learning how to love, how to heal, how to belong. Loneliness then becomes a bridge, not a wall, a reminder that your story is part of a much larger human one. Chapter 20 to 7 Ways to Become Your Most Emotionally Resilient Self. Emotional resilience is not the absence of pain, but the capacity to remain steady within it. It's the art of bending without breaking, of meeting life's challenges with grace instead of panic. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest outlines 7 ways to strengthen that inner foundation, to become the kind of person who trusts their ability to recover, adapt, and grow no matter what comes. The first way is to learn how to self-soothe instead of self-sabotage. When discomfort arises, most people seek distraction, scrolling, eating, blaming, overworking. Resilient people pause instead. They feel the discomfort without rushing to escape it. They breathe, reflect, and remind themselves that this too shall pass. Self-soothing isn't weakness, it's self-mastery. The second is to build a grounded routine. Resilience grows in structure. When your life has rhythm, chaos loses power. Small, consistent habits, morning walks, journaling, stillness before bed, teach your nervous system safety. The stronger your daily anchors, the calmer you remain when life shifts unexpectedly. The third is to reframe failure. Resilient people don't see failure as a verdict, they see it as feedback. They understand that mistakes are messages pointing toward refinement, not shame. Every disappointment becomes a data point that strengthens discernment. The fourth is to practice emotional neutrality. This means resisting the urge to label every experience as good or bad. Instead, resilient people ask, "What is this trying to show me?" Neutrality doesn't mean apathy, it means perspective. It allows you to stay calm enough to learn the lesson before reacting. The fifth is to strengthen self-trust. You can't control everything, but you can trust yourself to handle anything. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, every time you show up even when it's hard, you teach your brain that you're safe in your own hands. That inner trust is the foundation of resilience. The sixth is to surround yourself with grounded people. Resilience thrives in connection. When you are near those who are steady, compassionate, and self-aware, you absorb their calm. Healthy relationships remind you that you don't have to carry everything alone. And the seventh is to practice gratitude as a stabilizer. Gratitude shifts focus from what's missing to what's working. It rebalances your nervous system and recenters your perspective. Gratitude doesn't erase pain, it expands your ability to hold it without collapsing under it. Over time, these 7 practices weave together into strength. You stop fearing emotional waves because you've learned to surf them. You stop reacting impulsively because you've built inner safety. You stop seeing challenges as punishments and start seeing them as invitations to expand. Resilience is not a trait you're born with. It's a skill you build every time you choose awareness over avoidance, courage over comfort, and presence over panic. Chapter 21. Trust that your heart knows the truth, even if your mind cannot make sense of it. The mind is logical, but the heart is wise. And there will be moments in your life when logic fails to comfort you, when everything seems rationally fine, yet something deep inside whispers, "This isn't right." In this chapter, Brianna Wiest reminds you that your intuition, that quiet pull of the heart, is not irrational, it's sacred guidance. Your mind wants evidence, your heart speaks in energy. The heart knows through resonance. It feels when something aligns even before words can explain it. When you ignore that inner knowing, you end up in jobs that drain you, relationships that confuse you, or routines that dull your spirit. You call it confusion, but it's actually disconnection from your own truth. Trusting your heart means learning to listen to subtleties. Notice how your body reacts around certain people or decisions. Does your breath deepen, or does your chest tighten? Do you feel expanded, or do you feel small? These are not coincidences. They are internal signals pointing you toward alignment. Wiest emphasizes that your heart will often speak long before your mind is ready to agree. That's why the truth can feel uncomfortable. It challenges the illusions you've built. But ignoring that discomfort doesn't make it disappear. It turns into anxiety, exhaustion, and emotional heaviness. The longer you suppress your knowing, the louder it becomes. To trust your heart, you must accept that clarity often comes before proof. You may not be able to justify your choices to others, but you don't have to. Alignment rarely looks logical at first. It only reveals its wisdom in hindsight. What matters is the peace you feel when you honor it. Over time, you learn that the heart is not impulsive, it's ancient. It remembers who you are beneath fear, beneath conditioning, beneath the stories you tell yourself to survive. When you start living from that place, life begins to unfold with more ease. You stop forcing outcomes and start flowing with your truth. The mind will always ask, "What if I'm wrong?" The heart will gently answer, "What if you're right?" And in that stillness, you will realize that intuition isn't guessing, it's remembering. The more you honor it, the more life proves it was right all along. Chapter 22. How to Get Over Someone, the ultimate guide to releasing attachments, reinventing yourself, and opening your life to new love. Heartbreak feels like an ending, but it's really a rebirth. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest offers a compassionate roadmap for moving through loss, not by erasing love but by reclaiming yourself from it. Getting over someone is not about forgetting them. It's about remembering who you were before them and who you are becoming after. The first step is acceptance. You stop waiting for closure from the person who left. You stop replaying old conversations, looking for answers that no longer matter. Acceptance is not agreement, it's acknowledgement. It's saying, "This happened, and I can still be whole." The next step is allowance. You let yourself grieve fully, the anger, the confusion, the emptiness. You cry without apology. You write letters you never send. Healing requires that you honor every stage of mourning, because grief is love with nowhere to go. Then comes detachment. You begin to separate what was real from what was idealized. You stop romanticizing memories and start seeing them through the lens of truth. Love may have been genuine, but that doesn't mean it was sustainable. Detachment isn't bitterness, it's clarity. You also practice reinvention. The space heartbreak creates is fertile ground for rebirth. You explore new interests, rebuild friendships, and rediscover passions that once defined you. You stop measuring your days by who's missing, and start filling them with meaning again. Wiest reminds you that moving on doesn't mean your love was wasted. Every connection, even the painful ones, teaches you something sacred: how to love, how to forgive, how to choose better next time. What breaks you also builds you. Finally, you open your heart again, not because you're desperate to replace someone, but because you've learned that love is not a finite resource. The next love will not compete with the last one, it will meet a wiser, stronger, freer version of you. Getting over someone is not about finding closure through forgetting, it's about finding peace through remembering. You realize that love doesn't end when a relationship does, it simply changes form. The love you once gave outward begins to flow inward, healing the parts of you that once needed someone else to complete them. And one day, when you least expect it, you'll feel it, the quiet peace of freedom. The ache will soften, the memories will lose their sting, and you'll smile not because it didn't hurt, but because it no longer defines you. You will understand that the ending was never punishment, it was redirection. Because sometimes, losing someone else is how you finally find yourself. Chapter 23. If you ever feel lost, please remember that you can make a home within your own heart. There are seasons when life feels unfamiliar, when the places you once called home no longer comfort you, when the people you trusted drift away, and when your reflection in the mirror feels like a stranger's. In those moments, Brianna Wiest reminds you that home is not a location, nor is it found in other people. Home is the space you build within your own heart. When you feel lost, it's easy to believe that you must find something external to feel whole again, a new city, a new relationship, a new version of yourself. But the truth is simpler and more profound. You carry the ability to feel safe within you. The more you practice self-compassion, the more your heart becomes a refuge that no circumstance can take away. To make a home within your heart means allowing yourself to belong to yourself first. You begin by forgiving yourself for the mistakes that still echo in your memory. You stop treating your flaws like failures and start seeing them as evidence of your humanity. You remember that even your broken parts are deserving of tenderness. Wiest encourages you to reconnect with the quiet parts of life that anchor you: a warm cup of coffee, morning sunlight, deep breaths, prayer, journaling. These small rituals become doorways back to yourself. They remind you that peace doesn't live in the future, it grows in presence. And when you do feel lost, you can return to this truth: being lost isn't the opposite of being found. It's the path that leads you there. Every detour is an invitation to realign with what matters, to rebuild your foundation on your own terms. When you finally create this inner home, you stop fearing uncertainty. You move through life knowing that even if everything else changes, you will always have yourself to return to. The heart that once ached from wandering becomes a sanctuary of stillness, whispering, "You belong here." Chapter 24. 16 Little reminders for when you feel like you aren't quite where you want to be in life. There comes a time when you look around and wonder if you're behind, if everyone else is moving faster, achieving more, living fuller. This chapter is Brianna Wiest's gentle antidote to that comparison. She offers 16 reminders that progress is rarely visible from the inside, and that growth often feels like waiting. She reminds you that timing is divine, not random. You are not late, you are aligning. Every delay is preparing you for what would have destroyed you if it came sooner. She reminds you that small steps count. Healing and success are built on quiet, unglamorous consistency. Every boundary set, every good habit repeated, every honest conversation, these are the bricks of transformation. She reminds you that comparison is blindness. You see others' highlight reels but not their invisible struggles. The only fair comparison is who you were yesterday versus who you are today. She reminds you that stagnation is sometimes sacred. Rest is not regression, it's incubation. What looks like stillness is often your soul gathering strength for the next leap. She reminds you that failure isn't a detour, it's direction. Every time something falls apart, it's clearing space for what truly belongs. She reminds you that gratitude grounds growth. When you can appreciate where you are, even when it's imperfect, you shift from lack to abundance. And she reminds you that you're not supposed to have it all figured out. You're supposed to live the questions until the answers reveal themselves through experience. These small truths become lifelines when impatience or self-doubt creep in. Life unfolds in seasons, not seconds. You are allowed to move slowly. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to grow quietly. By the end of this chapter, Wiest helps you see that being not there yet doesn't mean you're lost, it means you're still on the journey. And in the process of walking, You're becoming the kind of person capable of holding the life you're dreaming of. Chapter 25. When life gives you an opportunity to change, please don't let it pass you by. Change rarely comes wrapped in comfort. It arrives disguised as endings, disruptions, or unexpected invitations that force you to confront what you've outgrown. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest urges you to recognize those moments, not as coincidences but as divine appointments. The life you want will often begin where the old one ends. You'll know change is calling when something in your life begins to feel heavy. A job that once excited you now drains you. A relationship that once aligned now restricts you. A dream that once fit now feels too small. These sensations are not failures, they are signals that it's time to evolve. But fear of the unknown can be paralyzing. Wiest reminds you that fear always appears right before transformation. Growth and anxiety often coexist. You can feel terrified and still move forward. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision that something else matters more. When opportunity comes, it rarely looks like a grand revelation. It might come as a sudden urge to apply for something new, an inner nudge to speak truth, or the collapse of what once worked. The temptation is to cling to familiarity, but holding on keeps you small. To embrace change, you must trust that endings are not punishments, they are redirections. Every time you let go, you create room for the life that's waiting. Wiest writes that transformation doesn't require that you know exactly what's next, it only asks that you say yes to the unknown. And when you do, when you take that first small shaky step, you discover that the path unfolds as you walk it. Change isn't a single moment, it's a series of brave decisions made in faith. So when life knocks softly and says it's time, don't wait for the perfect sign. Open the door. Step through. Because every new chapter begins with one choice: to believe that the future can hold more than the past ever did. Chapter 26. On the days it feels like you'll never move forward, just remember how far you've come. Healing doesn't happen in straight lines. Some days you'll feel unstoppable, other days you'll feel like you've fallen back to the beginning. This chapter is Brianna Wiest's reassurance for the moments when progress feels invisible, and your efforts seem to dissolve into exhaustion. She reminds you that the distance between where you were and where you are now is already evidence of your resilience. You've survived what once broke you. You've outgrown versions of yourself that once seemed permanent. You've set boundaries you used to fear enforcing, and you've spoken truths you used to swallow. But because healing happens gradually, it often hides behind ordinary days. You may not notice the weight you no longer carry because your strength has increased. Wiest encourages you to pause and take inventory, not of what's missing but of what's been mended. The nights you cried and still woke up to try again. The friendships you rebuilt with honesty. The way your self-talk has softened. These small shifts are proof that you've been moving forward, even when you couldn't see it. She reminds you that growth often feels like grief, because you're shedding what no longer fits. The discomfort is not regression, it's regeneration. You are not back at square one, you're circling upward, revisiting familiar lessons from a higher level of understanding. When discouragement whispers nothing's changing, answer it with truth: I am. You are changing in every boundary set, in every moment you choose peace over chaos, in every second you forgive instead of retaliate. Progress isn't always loud, it's often the quiet decision to keep going when no one is watching. One day, what feels stagnant will reveal itself as sacred preparation. Until then, remind yourself that healing is not about speed, it's about endurance. You're not moving backward, you're learning to walk steadily toward the person you've always been becoming. Chapter 27 to 10 Things you will start to feel when a big life change is around the corner. Transformation often whispers before it shouts. You sense it in your bones long before your life rearranges itself. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest describes the quiet, sometimes confusing sensations that arise when a major life shift is approaching, not as warnings to fear but as invitations to trust. You'll start to feel restless. The places and people that once fit now feel tight, like clothes you've outgrown. You'll crave more meaning, more depth, more honesty. You'll feel disconnected from old habits. Things that used to entertain you start to lose their appeal. You'll no longer find comfort in what numbs you, and that emptiness is actually clarity forming. You'll feel uncertain. The map you relied on will stop making sense, forcing you to rely on intuition instead of control. Confusion becomes your compass. It points toward something new being born. You'll feel drawn to solitude. You'll need silence not because you're lonely, but because your soul is downloading new instructions. Growth often requires withdrawal. You'll feel waves of emotion, excitement, fear, nostalgia all at once. That mix is normal. It means you're crossing a threshold between old identity and new awareness. You'll feel the urge to simplify. You'll start letting go of clutter, obligations, and even relationships that no longer align. The more space you create, the easier it becomes to breathe. You'll feel tested. The universe will send small challenges to confirm your readiness. Every obstacle becomes a rehearsal for the new life awaiting you. You'll feel synchronicities. Signs, numbers, coincidences, gentle reminders that you're being guided. You'll feel a surge of creativity. Ideas come alive again. You begin to dream like the person you're becoming. And finally, you'll feel peace. The restlessness fades, replaced by a quiet certainty that what's coming is right. West explains that these sensations are not chaos, they are contractions of the soul. The discomfort means your old life is dissolving to make space for the new. You don't have to force it, you just have to breathe through it. Trust the process, because life changes right after it convinces you it never will. Chapter 28. There's no such thing as falling behind. There is not just one way your life can unfold. Comparison is one of the subtlest forms of self-abandonment. In this chapter, Brianna Weiss dismantles the illusion that life follows a universal timeline. There is no behind or ahead. There is only your path, unfolding at its own divine pace. We're taught to measure ourselves against milestones, career, marriage, home, wealth. But those markers are societal scripts, not spiritual truths. You may bloom later, in a different season, or in a different way entirely, and that doesn't make your story any less meaningful. Life doesn't reward speed, it rewards alignment. Weiss reminds you that divine timing is not delay, it's protection. The things you think you're late for might be waiting for you to become the person capable of receiving them. Sometimes the detour is the destination, and what feels like pause is really preparation. She also warns that comparison distorts perspective. When you look at others, you see the highlight reel, not the hardship. You see the fruit, not the labor. You see what's visible, not what it cost. Every soul's curriculum is unique. You can't copy someone else's journey and expect peace. When you finally stop racing others, you rediscover the joy of walking your own path. You start noticing the beauty in your pace, the lessons that only come from patience, the people you meet along the slower roads, the insights born from stillness. The truth is, there's no timeline for healing, love, or success. There's only readiness. And readiness comes not from rushing, but from surrendering. So the next time your mind whispers that you're behind, remember, the only finish line worth crossing is peace. You are not late, you are on time for the life that's meant for you. Every delay has meaning. Every pause has purpose. Every moment of waiting is working quietly in your favor. Chapter 29. This is how you will know if you're actually on the wrong path in life. Sometimes the clearest way to recognize alignment is to notice when you're out of it. In this chapter, Brianna Weiss helps you identify the quiet signs that you may be walking a path that isn't truly yours. The wrong path doesn't always look wrong, it often looks logical, successful, or socially approved, but it drains your soul little by little until all that's left is exhaustion masquerading as discipline. You'll know you're on the wrong path when you feel constant resistance. Not the normal challenges of growth, but deep chronic friction. You keep forcing what doesn't flow, convincing yourself that suffering equals purpose. You wake up tired no matter how much you rest, because your spirit is weary from pretending. You'll know when peace becomes rare and anxiety becomes normal. Your body starts sending signals your mind tries to ignore: tight chest, shallow breath, unease that lingers even in quiet moments. The discomfort isn't punishment, it's guidance. It's your intuition saying, "This isn't it." You'll know you're off course when you live for validation instead of fulfillment. You start measuring your worth by how much approval you receive. But no amount of applause can quiet the ache that comes from betraying your truth. You'll know when you keep postponing joy. You tell yourself you'll rest when it's over, you'll travel when you've earned it, you'll be happy when you've achieved enough. But that when never arrives. A meaningful path brings joy in small doses now, not only later. And perhaps most importantly, you'll know you're on the wrong path when your life looks good but feels wrong. On paper, everything aligns: career, relationship, reputation, but your heart remains unsettled. The disconnect between how your life appears and how it feels is the soul's alarm clock. West reminds you that the wrong path isn't wasted, it's revealing. Every misstep clarifies what your spirit truly needs. Once you acknowledge the truth, the next right step often feels like relief. The right path may not be easy, but it will bring peace. The difference is subtle but unmistakable: the wrong path drains you, the right one nourishes you. To find your way back, listen inward. If something continually costs you your joy, your sleep, or your sense of purpose, it's too expensive. Your alignment is your responsibility. When you honor it, your life begins to open again, naturally, gently, beautifully. Chapter 30. You will start feeling like enough when you decide what is enough for you. Feeling inadequate is often not a lack of worth, but a lack of definition. In this chapter, Brianna West explains that most people feel not enough because they've allowed society, culture, and comparison to define what enough means. True peace begins when you define it for yourself. She writes that you will never feel fulfilled chasing someone else's metrics. You'll never feel secure measuring your worth by how much you have, how far you've gone, or how well you perform for others. Enough isn't a finish line, it's a decision. You start feeling like enough when you release the endless chase for validation. You stop needing to prove your value through productivity or relationships. You start saying, "This moment is enough. This version of me is worthy." That's not complacency, it's contentment, and contentment is power. West encourages you to redefine success from the inside out. Maybe enough looks like a slower life. Maybe it's fewer friends but deeper conversations. Maybe it's not fame but peace. Once you decide what enough means for you, life becomes quieter, lighter, more honest. You also begin to realize that enough is dynamic, it grows with you. Some days it's just getting out of bed and breathing through the morning. Other days it's finishing the project, showing up fully, or sharing your truth. The standard is not perfection, it's presence. The moment you stop asking, "Am I enough?" and start declaring, "I am," something shifts. Your energy changes. You stop performing and start existing. You stop grasping and start receiving. West ends the chapter with a gentle reminder: you have always been enough. You were enough the day you were born, before achievement, before comparison, before doubt. The world taught you otherwise, but your soul has never forgotten. Feeling like enough isn't something you earn, it's something you remember. Chapter 31 to 9 Questions that will help you make the most of every day. Each day is a lifetime in miniature, and how you live your days shapes the quality of your entire life. In this chapter, Brianna West offers 9 questions that help you slow down, realign, and infuse your routine with meaning. They are not rules, they are reflections designed to pull you back into the present moment. 1. What am I grateful for right now? Gratitude grounds you in abundance and helps you notice what's already working. 2. What can I let go of today? Release is renewal. Whether it's a thought, resentment, or expectation, every letting go lightens you. 3. What one small action will move me closer to peace? Not perfection, not productivity, peace. Even a 5-minute walk or a moment of silence counts. 4. What do I need to forgive myself for? Self-forgiveness keeps your heart uncluttered. You can't evolve while punishing yourself for old mistakes. 5. Who can I show love to today? Connection multiplies joy. A single act of kindness can shift your entire energy. 6. What am I resisting? Resistance reveals fear. Naming it weakens its hold. 7. What am I proud of? Celebrate small victories. They are proof that you are building something lasting. 8. What is one thing I can do to nourish my body? Healing is physical as much as emotional. Your body is not a vehicle for productivity, it's your home. 9. If today were my last day, how would I want to feel? This question anchors you to truth. It cuts through noise and reminds you that fulfillment lies in presence, not performance. Wes suggests asking these questions each morning or night, not to perfect your life but to stay awake to it. These reflections turn ordinary days into sacred practice. You stop rushing through time and start inhabiting it. You begin to realize that meaning isn't hidden in milestones, it's made in moments. Each question becomes a doorway back to awareness. And the more aware you are, the more alive you become. When you make peace a daily habit, life stops feeling like something to manage and starts feeling like something to cherish. Chapter 32. This year, please stop fighting battles you can't win. Some battles are worth fighting, and some are meant to be released. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest teaches that peace doesn't always come from perseverance, it often comes from discernment. Knowing when to walk away is not failure, it's wisdom. Life will keep handing you situations that test whether you value being right more than being free. You fight unwinnable battles when you keep trying to convince people to see your worth. You fight them when you argue with reality, replay the past, or expect others to heal the parts of you they didn't break. You fight them when you try to prove love, force closure, or demand validation from people committed to misunderstanding you. These are wars of the ego, not the soul. Wiest reminds you that the most exhausting conflicts are the ones happening inside your own mind, the constant mental tug-of-war between what is and what should have been. The longer you wrestle with what's gone, the longer you stay bound to it. Surrender is not giving up, it's letting go of illusions that keep you suffering. She urges you to choose peace even when it costs pride. To stop trying to fix what refuses to change. To trust that absence is also guidance, that the people who leave make space for those meant to stay. Healing is not about proving your strength through resistance, it's about proving your maturity through release. When you stop fighting battles you can't win, you free energy for the ones that matter, building, creating, forgiving, living. You realize that peace is not passive, it's powerful. Walking away can be the loudest declaration of self-respect you'll ever make. By the end of this chapter, you understand that you don't have to win every fight to have victory. Sometimes the greatest triumph is silence. Sometimes it's the ability to smile at what once triggered you. And sometimes it's the quiet grace of saying, I'm done trying to control what's not mine to carry. Chapter 33. This is what it really means to be kind to yourself, because it's not as easy as you think. Kindness toward yourself is not indulgence, it's alignment. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest dismantles the idea that self-kindness is about bubble baths and soft words. Real kindness often looks like discipline, boundaries, and the willingness to do what's best for your future self, even when it's uncomfortable now. To be kind to yourself means saying no when you want to say yes out of guilt. It means leaving environments that suffocate your peace, even when it disappoints others. It means resting before you collapse, speaking truth instead of people-pleasing, and forgiving yourself not because you're flawless but because you're human. Wiest reminds you that kindness is not always gentle, it can be fierce. Sometimes being kind means refusing to enable your own bad habits. It's skipping the temporary comfort that perpetuates long-term pain. It's looking yourself in the mirror and saying, we're doing better now, even when change hurts. Self-kindness is also learning to stop narrating your worth through criticism. The inner voice that scolds, compares and diminishes is not truth, it's fear. The more you speak compassionately to yourself, the more your nervous system learns safety. The more you feel safe, the easier it becomes to grow. West encourages you to treat yourself like someone you love, someone whose pain you wouldn't dismiss, whose efforts you'd praise, whose mistakes you'd forgive. Because you are that person. When you begin to live from this understanding, your relationship with yourself transforms. You stop being your own opponent and become your greatest ally. Kindness then isn't weakness, it's strength refined through patience. It's showing up for yourself in the small moments no one sees. It's the courage to live gently in a world that confuses harshness with strength. And when you practice that kind of kindness long enough, it stops feeling like effort, it becomes your nature. Chapter 34. Remember that everything will feel impossible right before a huge shift takes place. Right before life changes, it often falls apart. The calm before transformation is rarely calm, it's chaos, exhaustion, and doubt. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest offers comfort for that in-between space where everything feels uncertain. The breaking point, she says, is not the end, it's the doorway to breakthrough. When you're about to level up, life tests your readiness. The old systems that once held you begin to collapse. You feel resistance everywhere, projects stall, relationships strain, emotions surge. You start to question everything, your choices, your faith, your future. But that intensity isn't proof that you're failing, it's evidence that you're expanding. Wiest compares transformation to the final mile of a long run. It's the hardest part, not because you're weak, but because you're nearing the finish line. The discomfort signals proximity to change. The pressure you feel is your old life releasing its grip. She reminds you that every major shift, career, healing, identity, requires a contraction before expansion. You can't step into your next season with the same habits, beliefs, or fears that anchored the last one. So life creates tension to push you forward. The chaos is not chaos, it's construction. The key is not to give up when it feels unbearable. Instead, ground yourself in the truth that things feel impossible precisely because you're stretching into new possibility. Keep breathing, keep showing up, keep trusting. The moment you want to quit is often the moment right before clarity arrives. When the dust settles, you'll look back and realize that what felt like destruction was actually delivery. You were not breaking down, you were being rebuilt. You were not losing your way, you were finding your wings. Wiest closes the chapter with a reminder that the light always returns, but it doesn't burst in, it rises slowly just like dawn. And when it does, you'll see that the impossible season was never punishment. It was preparation for a life you were finally ready to live. Chapter 35. If you don't know what you want in life, start with what you're most afraid of. When you're unsure of your path, fear becomes your compass. Brianna Wiest explains that clarity often hides beneath avoidance. What you fear doing, saying, or pursuing usually points to where your soul is asking for growth. The things that terrify you are rarely arbitrary, they are mirrors reflecting what matters most. She writes that most people mistake confusion for indecision, but confusion is often a mask for fear. We say we don't know what we want, because admitting what we truly desire would require courage, vulnerability, and change. It's safer to stay uncertain than to risk failure or disappointment. But your dreams don't disappear when ignored, they quietly ache inside you until you pay attention. Wiest urges you to trace your fear to its root. What would you do if you weren't afraid of rejection, judgment, or loss? Who would you become if you trusted that you could handle discomfort? These questions cut through doubt and lead you back to truth. Fear isn't an obstacle, it's an arrow. It directs you toward what's meaningful. She reminds you that every great transformation begins with trembling hands. Courage is not confidence, it's willingness. You don't need to eradicate fear before taking the next step, you only need to walk with it. The presence of fear means you're standing on the edge of expansion. In learning to listen to your fear, you reclaim power from it. You realize it's not a warning to stop, it's an invitation to begin. What frightens you most often holds the key to your freedom. The dream that scares you, the conversation you avoid, the truth you suppress, those are the thresholds between the life you have and the one waiting to unfold. When you face your fears with gentleness and honesty, they lose their authority. You begin to see them not as barriers but as guides. And with each step into what once intimidated you, you gather proof that you are stronger than you believed. In the end, Wayest reminds you, the path you fear is the path that will free you. Chapter 36. Sometimes purpose can be so subtle you don't realize you're already living it. We often imagine purpose as a lightning bolt of clarity, a single passion that defines our destiny. But Brianna Wayest offers a quieter, humbler view. Sometimes purpose isn't loud or dramatic. It's woven through your small choices, your kindness, your consistency, your presence. You may already be living it, without realizing it. Purpose doesn't always arrive as a career, a title, or a grand mission. It often reveals itself in how you show up for ordinary moments, how you listen to others, how you comfort a friend, how you keep going when no one notices. The world measures purpose by visibility, but the soul measures it by authenticity. Wayest encourages you to notice where you feel most alive, where time disappears, and where peace lingers after effort. Those are clues. Purpose feels like alignment, not applause. It's what you do naturally, when you stop trying to impress. She reminds you that purpose evolves. It's not a destination you find once and keep forever. It's a living current that grows as you grow. Sometimes your purpose is to heal. Sometimes it's to help others heal. Sometimes it's simply to live with compassion in a world that's forgotten how. Many people overlook their purpose because it feels too simple. But Wayest argues that simplicity is sacred. The smile that lifts someone's day, the idea that sparks change, the quiet love that steadies a family, these are not small things. They are threads in the fabric of meaning. To realize your purpose, you don't have to search, you have to notice. Notice what pulls at your heart, what brings you peace, what feels honest. You are not behind, you are already in motion. And one day you'll look back and realize that your purpose wasn't something you chased, it was something you embodied. Chapter 37. This is how you start to let go, even if you don't feel like you're ready yet. Letting go rarely feels like readiness, it feels like grief. Brianna Wayest writes that release is not an intellectual decision but an emotional process, one that unfolds slowly, painfully, beautifully. You don't let go when you stop caring, you let go when you start accepting. She explains that we cling to people, habits, and dreams not because they still serve us, but because they once made us feel safe. Letting go threatens that safety, so we wait for the perfect moment to feel brave enough. But that moment never comes. Letting go is not something you prepare for, it's something you practice. The first step is honesty. Admit what no longer fits, even if it breaks your heart. Stop pretending something still works when your spirit already knows it doesn't. The truth hurts once, denial hurts endlessly. The second step is permission. Allow yourself to grieve what's ending. Let the tears come. Let the memories fade. Don't rush the ache, it's proof that you loved deeply. Letting go is not rejection of the past, it's reverence for it. The third step is trust. Trust that life replaces what it removes. Every closed door is an act of divine protection, even when it feels cruel. The empty spaces in your life are not punishments, they're invitations for something better. And finally comes surrender. You stop replaying what could have been and start embracing what is. You no longer need answers or closure. Peace becomes more important than understanding. Wayest reminds you that readiness is an illusion. You'll never feel fully prepared to release what once mattered. But if you wait for comfort, you'll wait forever. Begin anyway. Letting go doesn't erase love, it transforms it into wisdom. One day you'll wake up and realize that you no longer feel the same ache. The memory will still exist, but without heaviness. That's how you'll know you didn't lose, it simply no longer owns you. Chapter 38. There are 3 types of losses in our lives and each teaches us something different. Loss is the language of transformation. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest explains that there are three main kinds of loss, each carrying its own lesson, each reshaping your soul in a distinct way. The first is loss of what was. These are the endings we can point to: a breakup, a death, a move, a closed chapter. They demand mourning, ritual, and closure. This kind of loss teaches gratitude. It forces you to cherish what once was, and to recognize the depth of your capacity to love. The second is loss of what could have been. This one hurts in silence: the unrealized future, the path not taken, the dream that never materialized. You grieve the version of life that lived only in your imagination. This loss teaches humility. It reminds you that control is an illusion, and that surrender is a sacred form of trust. The third is loss of who you were. As you grow, you shed identities, beliefs, and versions of yourself that no longer align. It's the most confusing form of grief because there's no visible ending, only internal transformation. This loss teaches acceptance. It asks you to love yourself through change, to make peace with becoming someone new. Wiest explains that each loss, though painful, carves space for expansion. Loss is not only a subtraction, it's an opening. The more you allow yourself to feel, the more life can fill those empty spaces with new meaning. She ends the chapter with a reminder: nothing truly loved is ever lost. It changes shape, it continues in memory, and it reappears in new forms of grace. Every loss, when honored, becomes a seed for renewal. Chapter 39: How to Write a Personal Mission Statement, because your vision can become your reality. Purpose becomes power when it's written down. Brianna Wiest explains that a personal mission statement isn't about business, it's about becoming. It's a declaration of how you intend to live, love, and grow, written with intention so that life doesn't pull you into distraction. To create one, start with reflection. Ask yourself, what matters most to me? What do I want to give? What do I want to experience? Let honesty guide you, not obligation. Your mission should feel like truth, not pressure. Next, define your values. These are your non-negotiables, the emotional anchors that keep your actions aligned with your soul. Maybe it's honesty, compassion, creativity, faith, or freedom. Every decision should flow from these roots. Then write your vision. Describe the life you want, not in terms of possessions or achievements, but in feelings, peace, connection, purpose. Let it be bold but grounded, specific yet open to divine timing. Afterward, outline your intentions. These are not rigid goals, but directions that align with your vision. Intentions keep you moving forward even when plans change. And finally, read your statement daily. Speak it into existence until it becomes second nature. Over time, it becomes a compass, a reminder of who you are and what you stand for, even when life gets noisy. Wiest concludes that writing your mission is an act of self-respect. It says, "My life deserves direction." It reminds you that vision isn't fantasy, it's focus. The clearer your mission, the easier it is to recognize what belongs and what doesn't. Your mission statement is a promise between you and your future self, to live on purpose, not by accident. And when you live that way long enough, your vision stops being something you chase. It becomes the reality you wake up to. Chapter 40: You're not going to realize you're blossoming, but it's going to happen anyway. Growth is rarely dramatic. There's no applause, no announcement, no lightning strike of recognition. It happens quietly, beneath the noise, behind the scenes, between the breaths of your ordinary life. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest reminds you that becoming isn't something you witness, it's something you live through. You'll think nothing's changing, yet one morning you'll react differently to the same old trigger. You'll find yourself smiling in a moment that once made you anxious. You'll realize the person you're becoming arrived softly, without ceremony. She explains that real transformation is slow because it's deep. It's not about surface habits, it's about rewiring your perception of self. That kind of change doesn't happen overnight. It happens in thousands of small, unseen moments of courage. You won't notice your growth because it will feel natural. The person you used to pretend to be becomes the person you simply are. Healing stops feeling like a project and starts feeling like peace. Wes tells you to stop waiting for proof of progress and start trusting the process. Just because you can't see the bloom doesn't mean the seed isn't breaking open. Blossoming happens beneath the soil, long before it becomes visible. One day, without realizing it, you'll look around and think, I'm okay now. Not perfect, not untouched, but peaceful. That's what blossoming looks like, quiet, subtle, sacred. Growth was never about becoming someone new, it was about remembering who you already were. Chapter 41 to 7 Thought Patterns that are keeping you stuck in a life you don't want. Your life changes when your thoughts do. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest identifies 7 mental loops that keep people anchored to unhappiness, and shows how awareness begins to dissolve them. You stay stuck when you believe it's too late. This lie robs you of possibility. Time is not your enemy, stagnation is. Life begins again the moment you decide to try. You stay stuck when you think you need certainty before moving forward. Waiting for guarantees is how fear disguises procrastination. Clarity comes through action, not before it. You stay stuck when you believe discomfort means danger. Discomfort is the birthplace of evolution. Pain is often proof of growth, not punishment. You stay stuck when you assume you must do everything alone. Isolation breeds burnout. Healing is accelerated by connection, not solitude. You stay stuck when you equate setbacks with failure. Every detour is feedback, not defeat. You don't start over, you start wiser. You stay stuck when you think you must feel ready to begin. Readiness is born through movement. Begin before you believe you can. And you stay stuck when you think healing means never hurting again. True healing means you can feel pain without losing peace. It's not immunity, it's integration. Wiest teaches that the way out of stagnation is awareness. You can't change what you can't see, but once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. The moment you question your old thoughts, you reclaim your freedom from them. Each time you choose a new thought, you build a new life. And in time, your mind, once your cage, becomes your home. Chapter 42 You can't lose relationships, you can only outgrow them. Relationships are not possessions, they are classrooms. In this chapter, Brianna Wiest reframes endings not as losses but as graduations. You don't lose people, you evolve past certain versions of them, and sometimes that means walking separate paths. When you outgrow a relationship, it doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It means you've stopped shrinking. You've stopped tolerating what no longer aligns with your peace. The bond may have served a sacred purpose to teach you love, patience, or boundaries, but once the lesson is learned, the connection changes. Wiest reminds you that attachment and alignment are different. Attachment clings, alignment flows. You can love someone deeply and still know that the story has ended. Letting go doesn't erase love, it transforms it. Outgrowing relationships is part of healing. The more you respect your evolution, the more you make room for relationships rooted in authenticity. You begin to realize that endings don't diminish connection, they refine it. The people meant for your next chapter will recognize the new version of you without resistance. She encourages you to bless what's leaving instead of cursing it. Gratitude closes the door gently. Every person you've ever loved has shaped your becoming. They live within you even in their absence. Wiest concludes that you never truly lose anyone, you integrate them. The love, the memories, the lessons, they remain, but without attachment. And in that freedom you open space for new, higher forms of love. Chapter 43. Read this while you're waiting for the storm in your life to pass. There are seasons when everything feels too heavy to hold. You wake up tired before the day begins, conversations sound like noise, and even hope feels distant. This chapter is for those moments, the ones that make you wonder if you've somehow taken a wrong turn on your healing journey. Brianna Wiest reminds you that storms do not mean you're lost. They are part of the weather of transformation, and every season of chaos eventually reveals what was meant to stay. The storm, she says, isn't punishment. It's movement. It's the unmaking of what can no longer exist around the person you're becoming. It strips away illusions, leaving only what's real, your resilience, your truth, your ability to still breathe even when it hurts. Sometimes the calm doesn't come when you want it. It comes when you've learned what the storm needed to teach you. In the waiting, West invites you to stop trying to fix the thunder. You don't have to be graceful or composed. You don't even have to be positive. You just have to stay present. Because storms don't ask for strength, they ask for surrender. The rain isn't there to drown you, it's there to wash something old away. She reminds you that storms always serve renewal. They clear what was stale, they awaken what was numb, and they soften what had grown rigid from pretending to be fine. So instead of asking, "When will this end?" she encourages you to ask, "What is this trying to make room for?" When the sky finally clears, and it will, you'll find that the storm changed you. The things that once shattered your peace no longer hold the same power. You'll feel steadier, softer, wiser. You won't need to chase light, because it will already be inside you. The storm never took anything that belonged to you. It only carried away what you'd outgrown. Chapter 44. We crave perfection because we want to feel safe. Perfection is rarely about beauty or success, it's about control. It's the mind's attempt to protect the heart from shame and rejection. Brianna West uncovers how our obsession with getting it right is often rooted in fear, not ambition. Somewhere along the way, we learned that being perfect could keep us safe from judgment, from being left behind, from feeling unworthy. She explains that perfection is a shield, not a standard. It keeps you busy improving yourself, so you don't have to feel the grief of being human. But real safety doesn't come from perfection, it comes from acceptance, from meeting yourself where you are instead of punishing yourself for where you are not. The truth is, perfection offers the illusion of control but denies you peace. You keep striving, comparing, polishing, performing, yet no matter how flawless the image, the ache remains. West reminds you that peace doesn't come from tightening your grip on life, it comes from loosening it. From realizing that the messiness is not evidence of failure, it's proof that you're alive and growing. Being human means you'll misstep. You'll misunderstand. You'll make choices that later make you wince. And yet, those very imperfections are what make your story whole. If you could remove every crack, you'd erase every lesson. If you could scrub away every flaw, you'd lose your humanity. To crave perfection, West says, is to crave safety in all the wrong places. What you really want is to know that you'll still be loved even when you're not ideal. What you want is to rest in the truth that you are already enough, not because of what you achieve, but because of who you are. When you begin to accept that, the pursuit of perfection slowly transforms into the pursuit of peace. You start to realize that your worth doesn't live in your achievements or your reflection, it lives in your being. Chapter 45. How to know if you're overcorrecting your life. Healing is about balance, but sometimes we swing too far in the other direction. After being hurt, we promise ourselves we'll never be that vulnerable again. After being ignored, we decide we'll never need anyone again. After being taken advantage of, we vow never to trust. Brianna West calls this overcorrection, the subconscious belief that safety is found in extremes. She explains that when pain goes unprocessed, the mind learns in absolutes. It doesn't say, "I'll be more careful next time," it says, "Never again." It doesn't say, "I'll heal slowly," it says, "I'll never feel this way again." This rigid form of self-protection feels like strength, but it's actually fear dressed up as control. West shows how overcorrection disguises itself as empowerment, setting walls so high that no one can hurt you, staying so busy that you never have to feel. But the truth is, anything that demands you close your heart to feel safe isn't healing, it's avoidance. Real strength is not coldness, it's warmth with boundaries. It's letting love in again, but being wise enough to know what kind. To know if you're overcorrecting, she says, look for places where your decisions are still reactions to old wounds. Are you rejecting people before they can reject you? Are you shutting down joy because happiness once led to heartbreak? Are you labeling numbness as peace? These are signs that you're protecting the pain instead of processing it. The correction isn't to swing back, it's to soften. To let your heart stretch enough to hold safety and connection at once. The goal is not to stop caring, it's to care with wisdom. Healing, West reminds, is not about living on guard forever, it's about trusting yourself enough to live freely again. When you realize that balance is not fragility but maturity, you stop punishing yourself for needing both caution and courage. And in that space you begin to live, not react. Chapter 46. You already know what your next step is. There's a moment in healing when you stop seeking signs, because the truth has already settled quietly in your chest. You've been circling it for weeks, maybe months, waiting for clarity, waiting for perfect timing, waiting for proof that you're ready. But as Brianna West writes in her closing reflection, readiness isn't something that appears from the outside. It's the quiet knowing that's been whispering to you all along. The problem isn't uncertainty, it's hesitation. You know what to do, to leave, to begin, to rest, to speak, to try again, but fear convinces you to wait for a louder answer. West reminds you that you don't need certainty to move, you only need honesty. The next step doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be yours. Courage, she says, is not the absence of fear. It's the choice to move with fear still sitting beside you. You don't wait until you feel ready, you become ready by moving. The path is revealed by the walking, not the waiting. This final truth is the heartbeat of the entire book. Healing isn't about reaching a finish line. It's about learning how to start again, softer, wiser, and more awake to your own power. Every ending was just preparation for the next beginning. Every detour was a correction, not a punishment. Every quiet realization was proof that you were never broken, only unfolding. When you finally take that next step, the world doesn't suddenly become easier, but it becomes yours again. And that's the point. Healing is not about escaping the hard parts of life, it's about returning to it with an open heart. So when you're ready, and you are, stop waiting for a sign. This moment is the sign. The next step doesn't need to be perfect. It only needs to be taken. Final summary. Brianna West's book is a field guide for quiet transformation. It argues that healing doesn't begin with a grand breakthrough. It begins the moment you stop negotiating with your pain and tell the truth about what hurts. Readiness isn't bravado, it's honesty. From there, change unfolds through small, repeatable practices, micro-healing, that return you to steadiness, a glass of water before coffee, a walk before the inbox, a pause before a reaction. The thesis is simple and demanding at once. You don't overhaul your life in one decision, you rebuild it one aligned choice at a time. Across short, potent chapters, West reframes healing from fixing yourself to relating to yourself differently. She teaches you to listen to emotions as information rather than identity. Sadness signals what mattered. Anger points to crossed boundaries. Fear is data about perceived risk, not destiny. Interpreted this way, feelings stop running your life and start tutoring it. Letting go is a constant practice threaded through the book. You're encouraged to release people who can't meet your depth, ideas of who you should be, and futures you imagine but won't live. Release isn't abandonment, it's faith that space invites what truly belongs. This flows into West's core measure of alignment, peace. What's right for you may still require effort, but beneath the work there's steadiness, not chronic friction, not self-betrayal. Peace becomes the compass, not intensity. West maps the inner terrain of change through phases: awakening, unraveling, resistance, release, rebuilding, integration, expansion, transcendence, reminding you that transformation is cyclical, not linear. You'll revisit old lessons from higher ground. Along the way, she spotlights the mind's defenses that keep you stuck: confirmation bias, status quo bias, negativity bias, sunk cost thinking, the illusion of control. Naming these patterns loosens their grip, so you can choose from clarity instead of conditioning. A major theme is sovereignty, taking your power back through boundaries, self-trust, and alignment with values you define, not the culture's metrics. Confidence isn't waiting to feel fearless, It's keeping promises to yourself until your nervous system recognizes you as safe. Purpose, likewise, is deglamorized. It's often subtle and already present in how you show up, your consistency, your presence, your kindness, long before it's a title or platform. On relationships, Weyest makes two liberating claims. First, you're not behind. Life doesn't operate on a universal timeline. Readiness beats chronology. Second, you don't really lose relationships, you outgrow versions of them. Endings can be graduations when attachment gives way to alignment. Heartbreak is treated as rebirth. You grieve fully, separate the ideal from the real, reinvent your days, and let love change forms without turning your heart to stone. When life feels stalled or stormy, the book reframes those seasons as preparation. The impossible phase often precedes a shift. Storms clear what can't stand, stillness incubates strength. Perfectionism is unmasked as a search for safety. True safety comes from self-acceptance. And if you've swung to extremes to protect yourself, Weyest cautions against overcorrection, walls instead of boundaries, isolation instead of discernment. Mature healing seeks balance, this time differently, not never again. Practically, Weyest arms you with daily scaffolding, reflective questions that anchor presence, a personal mission statement to align choices with values, small habits that stabilize the nervous system, gratitude to rebalance attention, and the habit of gentle rest so growth isn't confused with constant output. Progress is defined by softer triggers, kinder self-talk, steadier routines, and the ability to feel uncertainty without abandoning yourself. The closing movement gathers the book's ethos into two invitations. You already know your next step. Clarity has been whispering, the work is courage, not more evidence. The weight you feel is resistance, action lightens it. Learn to gently start over, again and again. Beginning anew doesn't require a new city or identity, it requires new relationship to the life you're already living. Starting over becomes a rhythm, not a rarity. Ultimately, when you're ready, This Is How You Heal is a manual for choosing alignment over performance, presence over perfection, and peace over noise. It teaches you to let endings be doorways, to trust the quiet returns of joy, and to measure a good life not by applause but by the calm that settles when your choices match your truth. Healing here isn't a finish line. It's a way you move gently, steadily, toward the person you've been all along. This has been the summary of When You're Ready, This Is How You Heal. Summarized by Cellwave Audio and narrated by Archie.